All right, I'm going to teach you 3 ways to attach buttons. I have a needle threaded with, well, yellow thread, and then I have actually a little knot back here. That is maybe not necessary, but I'm a knot girl, so knot. And then I have 3 different buttons. I'm going to teach you how to sew a button flush to the fabric, and how to sew a button to the fabric with what's called a shank, so that it's kind of got some room to give. And then also we can do one of these guys that kind of has its own little built-in shank. And then after that I will do a machine sewn on button. So yay buttons today. I'll be quick about it. And this is officially going to make your sewing book not close nicely. So first way to sew a button is, and of course I should show you how to mark, well, I'll show you how to mark with a buttonhole. That would be if we get everything lined up where we want it to be. Buttonhole sitting over the fabric as you would want. You would just kind of spread it open and press a dot in there. For this, since we're not really actually making these buttons for actual holes right now, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep adjusting my camera until it works. There. Okay, so let's just say these are where we want our 3 buttons to be for our practice today. If you have buttons, and they can be any buttons, I have one with 2 holes, one with 4 holes, don't worry about it. The first one we're going to do, just centering my button over the hole, and actually I can even just come from behind, and really I should have had breakfast this morning so my hand wouldn't be shaky. Okay, so make sure it's resting there. And this is just like the most simple sewing of a buttonhole, or a button onto a piece of fabric. Just kind of keep going. Now, I generally do just 2 lines. You can do X's. Oh goodness, I'm gonna be that person again where you can't see what I'm doing. I'll try. And if you're sewing it flat to the fabric, you don't have to worry about there being any room. I'm not gonna do this 100 times. Usually I get kind of obsessive when I'm stitching buttons on and make it so they won't come off in 100 years. But for today's lesson, I'm gonna do a couple of stitches and call it on. So that's just a simple hand stitch, and then to finish it, I usually just thread it under what's already happening there twice. There we go. And then that second time, before it pulls all the way through, I run my needle through it so it makes a knot. That's usually enough. So that is a flush button. And now we'll do the button with the shank. I'm going to use the same thread, tie another little knot. I wish I was Bob Ross right now, because it's so much fun to watch him just paint. And I have a feeling that watching me sew buttons onto fabric is not the same as watching Bob Ross paint. But that's okay. Okay, button number 2. I'm just going to give myself a little pilot hole here. Alright, here is the trick with sewing a button with a shank. I'm going to just run it through one of my holes. This button doesn't seem to have a front or back, so it doesn't matter. We're going to create the slack on the front side. Actually, here, let me get it going back through. There. And before that thread goes all the way, we'll create a little, oh goodness. Come on, team. You guys all feel bad for me right now that it's not working? Okay, cool. There it is. So the trick for the shank is actually stick a needle through it, and so then as we stitch it, it's going to be holding a little slack. Ooh, also, I wanted to tell you, I have had recently some very delicious guacamole, and I know that you're wondering why I'm talking about that, but my friend Peyton made it, and I want the recipe, and I asked her if she would do a tutorial for us, because I've never made guacamole in my 29 years, and she is going to, I think, come next week, and we're going to shoot a guacamole making tutorial. And I'm telling you that now so that you don't be bored watching me sew a button on. So yay, fun plug for guacamole making. There we go. We have stitched enough. Now this time we can pull the needle out, and we're going to send the needle one time through, but not through the button. So we're just going to bring the thread to the front, and then kind of a neat trick, we're just going to wind it around. And it's going to create a little shank and kind of bind up all that thread underneath. You could maybe make that shank a little longer, but there, you can kind of see it. Okay. And just a second. There we go. I'm getting phone calls this morning. Okay, and then we're going to finish it the same way we finished that first buttonhole. It's not super pretty on the back, but I guess nobody looks at the back anyway that much. Okay, there we go. And trim. And I'm going to go take that phone call. Okay, last button to manually sew on. It's gonna do it's this little purple one with the plastic shank on it. It feels pretty self-explanatory, but it's nice to do that one too. Just stick it through the shank and then just head back in right in that same area, and hopefully we won't have the same trouble that we had with the last button. There we go. And just do that a couple of times and tie it off, just like we did with the others. I don't have anything else interesting to talk about right now. No more guacamole conversation. So I'm just gonna knock this out. And then we get to go do the machine button, which is so cool. And oh, I think that I mentioned this, but don't actually use contrasting thread to sew on your button unless you're feeling very fancy, because I don't know, it's just nicer to have it blend in, but I'm just doing this for visual purposes. Okay, so we just sewed on that button about the same, but now we've super duper covered hand sewing buttons, and that is how I tie them off. The second one, I just run my needle through it. And I have pretty buttons to put in my book, and my book is never going to close the same again, but that's okay. Cheers. Okay, why didn't anybody tell me that I was sewing my green button onto my button sample page when I need it for my machine button? I judge you all for not speaking up, but I fixed it. We've got the right buttons on the right fabric, and I still have my green button to machine stitch, so no harm, no foul. Anyway, that is fixed, and I'm sure that if any of y'all caught that, you get 10 points. So, bye.